So like I said, the quizzes were a little lower than I was hoping for, but good news is I really do think it's going to be easier to score well on Wednesday's test instead of this quiz. And the reason I say that, if you think back to the beginning of the chapter, there was some pretty easy topics that will be on the test. So there will be questions on the test where I just give you 170 and say, what is the prime factorization? How do we do prime factorization? What's the easy way? To the tree. So find two numbers that multiply to that, which would be 10 and 17. 17's prime, so that one's done. 2 and 5, so I've got 1, 2, 1, 5, and 1, 17. You're done. Maybe it's 244. That breaks down into 2 and 122. That's even, so 2 and 61. Man, I picked a bad number. 61 is, I think that's a prime number actually. So, this is 2 squared times 61. You're done. There's going to be questions where it's just that. So to me, those should be gimme questions. Now, be careful, because on the first quiz of this chapter, I gave you a prime factorization question and it said, which of these could not be the answer to a prime factorization? And I think it said something like 2 squared times 3, 7, I think, was an answer. And then it was like 3 squared times 6 times 7. Hey, Emily. And then it was something like 2 squared times 5. Which of these can't be an answer to a prime factorization? Why? Because of the 6. That's not a prime number, right? That 6, if that was the case, if you had a factor tree and it was broken down into, I had a 3 and I had a 3 and I had a, or maybe it was a 7 and a 6 and then whatever. But if it broke down, let's do this. But basically you had this, could you leave it like that? No, because that 6 could go further, couldn't it? So be careful with those. So don't get confused on those kind of questions. You're just looking for non-prime numbers at that point. What numbers could have gotten broken down further? If I gave you these two numbers, 170 and 244, and I asked you for the GCF, how do you find GCF? Look for what do these two things have in common? They both have at least 1, 2 in this case, so the GCF is 2. But, there's going to be those kind of questions. So I think those right there really should be gimme points. If I give you 60 and 70 and say, what's the GCF? Well, 6 and 10, 2 and 3, 2 and 5, so that's 2 squared times 3 times 5, right? 7 and 10, 2 and 5, so that's just 2 times 5 times 7. What's my GCF? I've got a 2 in common, and I've got a 5 in common. The answer is 10. Easy? So the reason I say that the test on Wednesday should be easier to score on than the quiz yesterday is because yesterday there wasn't really any, this is a gimme question, right? This is a really easy one where I should be able to rack up some points. I do think there will be some like these on the test on Wednesday. Okay? And then we have the different types of factors. So that we have those. And then what was the first type of factoring we had? Factor by. What's the first kind of problem that we did with factoring? Factor by GCF, right? I think you guys are really good at these now. Like there's going to be a test question where it's just 6x squared y to the third minus, we'll do 20. Yeah, we'll do 20. X to the third y. What do they have in common? What can you divide by? Two. How many x's they got in common? 2. How many y's they got in common? At least 1. So great. Divide by 2, take away 2 x's, and take away a y. So you'd get 3, no x's, just a y squared. And then divide by 2, and you get 10. Take away 2 x's, you'd have an x. Take away a y, you're done. And basically undistribute. I think the first 2 sections of this test, and there's only 6 sections, so that's 1/3 of the test. That's going to be about 33% of the test. I think you guys are really good at, and these should be easy questions. Yes? What's the next section we talked about? What was the next type of factoring? No? Well, yeah, we did some grouping. So factor by grouping. And I do think you guys are pretty good at this. How do you recognize when you should be thinking factor by grouping? 4 terms. So if you see something that has 4 terms, like if you had a problem like 10b to the third minus 16b squared plus 25b minus 40. If you see 4 terms, you should be thinking grouping. But before you do grouping, I would also say look for something they have in common. Is there something I can divide all 4 numbers by? Because I'm close. I can go 5. Oh, that one's not 5. Maybe 2. That's even, that's even, that's even. Oh, that one's not even. So no, there is nothing I can pull out of there, right? Great. Just do the first 2. What can you divide out of the first 2? What can you divide both 10 and 2? And then how many b's can I take away? 2? So do that. Divide by 2b squared, I'd get 5b. Divide by 2b squared, and I'd get minus 8. And then what can I pull out of the second 2? A 5. And I do that, and sure enough, divide by 5, I get 5b. Divide by 5, and I get minus 8. Now they both have a 5b minus 8 in common. And when I pull that out, what are you left with? 2b squared and the 5. I think you guys are good at those. Like, we're almost at half the test already, and I think those are easy stuff, right? That's what I mean by I think we can score a lot easier on this test than the quiz, because I think the first half of it, a lot of it, you're going to go, oop, that's an easy question. Oop, that's an easy question. I can handle those. What's the next type of factoring we did? What was it actually called? The easy type. So you're going to have something like x squared minus 12x plus 20. How do you do these? What are we looking for? Do we have to worry about our lists? No, we just look at this list. What are 2 numbers that multiply to 10 and add up to 12? What are those 2 numbers? 10 and 2? This means my signs have to be the same, both negative. Done. What if I gave you x squared minus x minus 20? Now what am I looking for? Two numbers that multiply to 20 and subtract to 1. What are two numbers that multiply to 20 and subtract to 1? 5 and 4. Okay, this sign means my signs now have to be different. So one of these has to be positive, one has to be negative. The bigger one is going to end up being so. Guys, we're over halfway of the test. And we just did something that's called the easy type. I think we should score pretty well on this test, don't you? What was the next type of factoring? The fun type. Now, I know these are tedious, but I actually feel like you guys got pretty good at these. So let's do 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. First, we look to see, can we pull something out? No. Well, if you can't, what do you do next? Make your list. How do you multiply to a 2? 2 and 1, 1 and 2, right? In one of the two lists, you have to list both ways. 15 is 1 and 15, 3 and 5, right? And then how do you multiply these together? Outsides together and insides together. And what are we looking to do here? Subtract to 7. So we're looking for numbers like 9 and 2, 10 and 3, something that would subtract to 7. Outside's 15, inside's 2. Nope. 5. Whoa, what just happened? My computer's going crazy. What is going on here? I don't even know what happened. I've never seen that compass before. That's so, or the protractor. It's so weird. What just happened? Like, where'd it go? That whole problem just disappeared. My computer just totally flipped out. Let's try that again. So we said 1 and 2, what was it, 2 and 1, 1 and 15, 3 and 5, right? And we said that one wasn't it, so let's try this. Outside's 5, inside's 6. 5 and 6 do not subtract, or do they? I changed that to a 1. Do they? So that works? Okay, so this combo subtracts to 1, right? Did I have a 7 there before? Oh. All right, so the computer had a little goof, and then I had a little goof, so whatever. We found a good combo, right? What does that mean about my answer? What goes here? 1x. What goes here? 2x, right? So these two numbers are your first two numbers. These two numbers are your second two numbers, right? Again, this sign negative means my signs have to be different. So one of these is going to be positive, one's going to be negative. Bigger one's negative. And then remember, you got to look. That's how I would get my 5x. This is how I would get my 6x. What's bigger, 5 or 6? 6. So the 6 has to be the negative, which means that has to be the negative, and that has to be the positive. Are we good with these? I feel like you guys got pretty good at those. Then we had our shortcuts. Then we had our specials. And guys, remember, if I give you something like, I think something like this was a quiz question. It was like 36x squared minus 60x plus 25. Is that one of my shortcuts? Well, that's a perfect square. That's a perfect square, right? I can take a square root of that, which would be 6x. I can square root of this, which would be 5. Times it by 2, does that equal that 60? Yeah. I know this will factor. It factors nicely into 6x and 5. My signs are the same. They're both negative. That's the shortcut. That's the answer. Let's say I didn't realize this was a shortcut question. Could I have done this problem a different way? Could I have done this fun type method? Yeah, you can go 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 6 and 6, and then list them both ways. 1 and 25, 5 and 5, right? Maybe I list that method both ways. Outsides and insides and need to add up to 60. I'll bet you that's the combination that's going to work. Because outsides would be 30, insides would be 30. Yeah. 6x and 6x, 5 and 5. My signs are the same. They're both negative. And what should you do if you ever get the exact same thing twice? Isn't that the same thing as this? So do you even have to have that shortcut in your bag of tricks? No, you can do a fun type method. It's going to take you longer because, yeah, you're not using a shortcut. The ones I do worry about a little bit are these. What do we call those? Difference two squares. What does that factor into? Perfect square, and it's minus. What's the square root of that? 5x. What's the square root of 49? 7. What are my signs? 1 positive, 1 negative. 5x plus 7, 5x minus 7. That's it, guys. Then there will be a couple questions where you have to do multiple steps. Where you have to do, maybe I give you x to the 4th minus 16. Is that a difference two squares? Yeah, that'll factor. That'll factor into x squared plus 4, x squared minus 4. Am I done? No. Because this is still another difference of two squares, isn't it? Can I factor this part? What does x squared minus 4 factor into? X plus 2, x minus 2. There's probably going to be a question like that. So this would be your final answer. I can't factor that one because that's a plus. There's going to be ones where I give you a problem like this that factors into this, but then I actually, maybe the original problem was 4x squared minus 2x minus 30. If I give you this as a problem, what would be the first thing you have to do? Pull out a 2. So then you'd pull out a 2 and get to this. Then you're going to do this as a fun type. And then that just means you got a 2 out in front of your answer. And you're done. Make sense? That's the whole chapter, guys. All right, everybody take a look at page 574 and 575. It starts on page 574. I want you to look through this chapter review, and what's the first thing you notice? What's the first thing that jumps out at you in this chapter review? Logan, honestly, what's the first thing you just noticed? Because I saw your eyes just pop out. Holy crap, there's a lot of questions. There's 123 questions. What? That's a lot. I don't want you to do 123 questions, but I do want you to study. What's the best way to study for a math test? No, looking at math problems does not do you any good. Do some practice. Which ones do I want you to practice? I want you to do a little of each, but I want you to do the practice on the ones that you struggled the most on. If you didn't do very well on last night's quiz or yesterday's quiz, then you should do a lot of questions from the last two sections, sections 5 and 6. If you struggle with GCF a little bit, or the fun type or the easy type, then do some of those. Now, your homework, 30 questions. Your choice. Which 30 questions you do, totally up to you. Don't care which ones, you choose 30. I would say at least 1 or 2 from each section. So I might do 2 questions out of each section first. That'll get you to 12. And then start looking at which ones you want to do. This homework assignment is not due on Tuesday. It's going to be due on Wednesday, the day of the test. No, this is not part of your exam review. This is the last actual homework assignment.
I know, but the study guide review doesn't make sense.
No, it's totally different pages. I'm actually going to put that up there today and talk about that too. I can do that right now. Everybody take a look. I'll talk about your exam review right now too. Everybody take a look at page in the back of the book. It's in the green section, S12. S12, way in the back. See where it says chapter 5? Chapter 5 is S12, right? And then I believe chapter 6 is S14. And then chapter 7 would be S16. And chapter 8 is S18, right? Basically, every third on all 4. So you're going to do every third, every third, every third. 3, 3, 3. Yeah, it's a lot. Here's the good news. I'm giving it to you now. When is this when is this due? Your last day of school of this class. Meaning, if you're taking my exam, it's due on exam day, which for you guys would be that Wednesday, the 9th, June 9th. If you're opting out of my exam and you're planning on not coming to that day, then it would be the 8th, the Tuesday before that, right? And if you're in Miss Clark's class, their 4th hour, it'll be due on the exam day, which would be the Thursday. And if you're in my 6th hour, they get it till the Friday. And the way it's going to count for everybody is the same, or different. If you are taking my exam, it's going to be part of your exam grade. So basically, here's what we're going to do. I think your exam has 44 questions on it, which is a weird number. I didn't feel like making more questions. So let's say you get a 30 out of 44. That's whatever percent, right? Now, 44 is a bad number. What would be a better number? What would be even better than 45? 50 would be a nice round number, wouldn't it? I'm going to make your exam reviews worth 6 exam questions. You do those, you get the first 6 questions of the test right. So basically, you're going to end up with this grade. I'm going to add 6 to that because I'm definitely going to add 6 to this. If you do the exam reviews, that's the percent you'd get, whatever that is. If you don't do them, you'll still get the 30, but it's now out of 50. So basically, think of it as the first 6 exam questions are just do that. You're either going to start the exam with 6 correct questions, or you're going to start the exam with 6 incorrect questions. Does that make sense? And yes, I can do partial credit. If you do half of that, I can do half, 3 out of 6 or something like that. So we'll work with that. So if, and these are exam questions, so exams really valuable, so that they're worth a lot of points, basically. If you are opting out of my exam, then it's going to count as a 50-point homework assignment. The last big giant homework. So in Skyward, I'm going to put a 50-point homework assignment. If you are opting out of my exam, you're either going to get a 0 or a 50. It's either going to help your grade or hurt your grade.
How, what, like, hurt your grade if you have, like, a high homework percentage? No?
What?
Will it help your grade if you have, like, a...
Not really. If you have a high homework percentage already, it would pretty much keep your grade about the same. If you don't do it, it would, basically it's a week's worth of homework. You know, if you do a week's worth of homework, or if you don't do a week's worth of homework, yeah, it's going to help or hurt, generally. Do you have a lot of time to do that? Yeah, I mean, you got all next week, and then I'll say half of the week after that. So, yeah, we got a long time. You got this weekend. You can start it if you want to. We have all next week. So we have 4 days of school next week that we're just going to be reviewing. And my plan next week is I'm doing a chapter a day. Sorry, no, I'm not. We're going to, we got a review for the test on Tuesday and test on Wednesday. So if I were you this weekend, after I get done with this pick 30, I would do the last one. Because wouldn't the last one help you with the test too? So